Holding here, one of those fun and fanciful things that we've heard a lot about, or maybe you haven't, but you're about to. Made in Japan, Fender Stratocaster. Casino Guitars, Baxter here, thanks for tuning in. Enjoy our little journey down here to the far east of great guitar making. What I'm holding here is a 1983 Made in Japan Fender Stratocaster of the 1962 series. This is a custom color in pink metallic. Yes, pink metallic. They offered them in a few colors for the grand price of, I believe it was around like 85,000 yen back in the day. It's not as much money as you think. But this pink metallic, super small flakes in it. So it's not like the traditional metallic that we're used to seeing. Really cool color. It's like cotton candy. But let's break down this guitar a little bit more in detail, and then we'll kind of get into the history of what really happened with why there was an MIJ series in the first place. So this girl here has a pretty thin 60 style C. I put it in the oval C category. Got your rosewood board on here. Pretty decent frets though on her. Great piece of board. But what really comes through in this is it sounds like a vintage guitar. I've played a lot of Japanese guitars in my days, and I've loved almost all the ones from this sort of magical period of the early 80s up until like the late 80s even. It's this one's a joy to play. My first experience with it was one that Richard Lloyd had, and I was playing rhythm guitar for him, and he had one that I got to use on tour because I only had a Les Paul and a Telecaster, and he said I had to play a Strat. So I played his surf green one, I believe. I don't remember what year it was. I tried to buy it. He said no. It was probably worth a few $100s back then, more money than I had. But I was still trying to figure it out. These are worth more than that now. This guitar is unfortunately sold, and it's owned by a good friend of mine down in Florida. So I'm just using it for the sakes of talking about Made in Japan guitars. So in the 80s, there was a lot of happenings going on in the world of Fender and electric guitars. First off, Fender was in the transition period of shifting factories. It's hard to build guitars when there's not a factory there. And the Mexican factory had not yet been built yet. So there was a strange sort of land of affordable Fender guitars that were not being captured by the audience and the buying population that they wanted to get. Also, over in the great Asias, there's a rampant problem with forgeries starting to happen, which still continue to this day. But Fender saw it pretty bright and early in the land of Japan and said, hey, we don't like that very much. Tokai in particular was a company that I think Bill Schultz said was a very arrogant group that was not going to bow to Fender. And they said, we can pretty much do whatever you want. We can do whatever we want. We're gonna keep making these guitars. So Fender had the idea of, well, if we can't really beat them entirely out there, let's actually build our own guitars over there. So they contracted two groups in Japan. They had the Kanda Shokai and Yamano Music, were the two groups that Fender sort of formed to make the official Fender Japan LTD. And that launched in the early 80s and became a driving force for what some have said were some of the best guitars Fender made during that decade. What is fascinating about these guitars in particular is there was an entirely different design team for Fender Japan that was working on these. So it has like a strange set of craftsmanship and a unique take on what Fender had already created back in the 50s and 60s. They had the 50s model and the 60s model that were released in these two flavors. Not this color. This again was a custom color, not even pictured in the catalog, just in the description. So that's how rare these were. But as a player and as someone who has sort of collected weird and rare guitars, there's always been this mystique about the Fender Japanese instruments. Before like the Made in Japan guitars, it's a thing that's part of FMIC entirely. This was almost its own little Fender universe. And many would argue, as I said before, that these were the finest instruments being built by Fender, and they were being built in Japan. So I remember hearing stories back in the days that, well, they had to shut down Fender Japan because they were outpacing the ability and workmanship of the Fender USA. But then we have to jump into the transition period as this went, because this guitar is only built from like the 82 to 84 range is when this thing was in production. But 86 is when Bill Schultz took over Fender from CBS, the amazing purchase that changed the world and brought Fender back from the ashes. They started to slowly transition Fender Japan into a different model as they moved away back towards production and the Mexican factories could take place. And once Ensenada was in full running, Ensenada is huge. They captured that mid-tier sort of range back in the day, mid to lower tier price point that they were going for. And Fender Japan was almost made obsolete until they decided to sort of bring them back for the rarities and the oddities that we see today, such as the Final Fantasy ones and the amazing anime series guitars that they made, and just some of the really cool colors and different looks that come out of this strange workshop. So through all the twists and turns of Fender Japan and the different manufacturing bases that were making these guitars, from Dyna to Fujigen, now when they switched over to Dyna in sort of the 90s, once they jumped up there, they were having a little bit of a problem keeping up with the output of the guitars expected to be built in Japan, in Fender Japan. The number was somewhat staggering. I think at least it was 5,000 a month was expected to be delivered to them, and that would service the Asian markets, but they would find their ways over here. And the American collectors and buyers realized the greatness of these instruments upon these deliveries as well. But as they kind of kept going on, Fender eventually decided to sort of just take the handles back entirely, close the productions in Japan, and make it, you know, like not close, but just shift entirely to the output level and make it more of an FMIC as a whole collective again, sort of marking an end of an era of these beautiful things. But these have come back in as a re-release with old Fender right now too. With the JV Modified series being re-released by Fender, there's sort of going to be another resurgence in capturing these original ones as well. And it's been fun to see sort of all the Squires that Fender made in Japan and how excellent they are. Because we tout the classic vibe here at Casino Guitars still is one of our favorite Fender guitars on the market. Yeah. The JV S2 6265, that's kind of cool. That's what this little strange sticker is back here. You don't have to put that in there, but in case, I think it says 60. It says 65 on it. So it'd be like, you know, 1965. That's to designate the year. Yeah, but I mean, none of the details are right for that though, you know? It's just kind of like, it's funny because it's like
makes sense.
the logos are different. I mean,
yeah.
But that's how all these custom shops were in the beginning too. Like even the early Gibson custom shops, I don't know if this is part of the video or not, but it is now just talking. The early Gibson custom shops, the wiring was wrong and a lot of the details were wrong. You take it apart, now they've started doing the cloth wrap for the fenders. They didn't always do that. Just when you get historically accurate, people want that now. And so a lot of these details are sort of all over the place. It's their version of 1962, 1965. But they're really cool guitars. They're fun. We think here at Casino Guitars, and I've thought this for over a decade at least, that this is a great thing to jump into if you're in the collecting game at all. They're still somewhat affordable. I almost quoted, but I hate when I do that, so I stopped it. But they keep going up. This is one of those rare birds again, but if you find a good one of those early serial numbers from the MIJ series, it's a healthy investment to get in on, and they're fun to play. I like them. I wish I had Richard Lloyd's, but he wouldn't let me get it. I might call him up and see if he still has that guitar. He might have it sitting in a closet somewhere collecting dust. I don't know. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining us. If you've had experiences with these MIJ guitars in the past, or if you want to, just share them down below. Let us know what you think. Click like, subscribe, or don't. It'd be nice if you did. And just have a great day. Casino Guitars, signing out.